the bottom of 17b2. 17b2 in the right column in the Yard Scroll. We're about to talk about Megillus Taanis. What was the Megillus Taanis? Megillus Taanis was a Megillah, a scroll, which was sort of misnamed as Megillus Taanis, the Megillah of Fast. In fact, it was, in essence, a Megillah, a scroll of minor Yom Tovim on which we do not fast. Included in these minor Yom Tovim holidays was Purim and Hanukkah. And today, that is the only two of the minor holidays that we continue to keep that were written down originally in the Megillus Taanis. And more or less, the Megillus Taanis is lost today. But as we're going to see, there were a lot of minor holidays that happened. And the rule was, of course, on the days of the minor holidays, you were not allowed to fast. And thereby, you were not allowed to eulogize. And the question always was, in order to protect the sanctity of these rabbinical minor holidays, do we impose the day before and the day after, or the day after, some of the stringencies of the day itself, i.e. no fasting and no eulogies? Yes or no? Maybe. And there's a lot of opinions. Again, the reason why you would extend it to the day before, the day after, was merely to protect the sanctity and to keep these minor holidays. Obviously, biblical holidays don't require this protection. And the proof of that would be, for an example, every Friday you're allowed to work, even though Shabbos is coming, right? And so that's an example. And this is what this Gemara, from here to the end of the parak, is going to be busy with. So, having given that introduction, let's get started. Wherever it says regarding a minor Yom Tov, of which we're in the middle of one right now, Hanukkah, for the perfect example, right? Which says you're not allowed to utilize, that also means lefanav asar, afterward, before it, the day before. You would also not be able to to say a hesped, la'akrav mutter, but the day after the minor holiday, you are allowed to eulogize. Tanu Rabbanan, what are we talking about here? Elaine Yoima, these are the days, the light misana behind, that you're not allowed to fast on them. Ulmiksosa light mispad behind, and there are some of them, not all. Even all these days that you're not allowed to fast, some of them you're also now not allowed to do a hesped. You're not allowed to eulogize. From Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 8th of Nisan, Itukam Tamida, the Tamid offering was properly established. There was a great argument with the Sadducees. With the Sadducees, they felt that the carbon tamid was really an individual sacrifice and had to be brought by various individuals. The sages, the Pharisees, the Perushim, us, held that no, in fact, the carbon tamid is a carbon sibor, a communal sacrifice, which means that the animals come from the money that was given with the machzis shekel, with the half shekel that every Jew had to give at the end of Adar to fill up the coffers of the treasury of the Beis Hamikdash. So anyways, they went back and forth on this until finally on the 8th of Nisan, the Sadducees agreed to the sages, agreed to the Pharisees, agreed to us, that in fact the carbon tamid is not an individual carbon, but is in fact a communal carbon, that the money and that it should be the sacrifices, the animals should be purchased from the communal funds of the lishka, of the treasury, from the machzis shekel. So they established 8 days worth of minor holidays from Rosh Chodesh Nisan all the way to the 8th of Nisan. Because on that day, the Talmud was properly established, as we just explained. The loyal mispad behind. On these days, you're not allowed to fast, and not only you're not allowed to fast, you're not even allowed to eulogize. You're not allowed to give hesped. Says the Gemara, and from the 8th day of Nisan until the end of the Moed, until the end of the holiday of Pesach, from the 8th day of Nisan until the end of the Yontiv of Pesach, 17b3, okay, by then the date of when Shavuos would fall was settled. What happened over here? There was the famous argument with the Baitusim. If you remember, the pasuk says, "B'mochras haShabbos." You should bring on the day, on the morning after the Shabbos. You shall bring the omer. Okay, you should bring the omer. The omer, of course, is from the new crop, and with that allowed us to start using the new crop. And then we knew that exactly 49 days from the Omer was Shavuos. The Baitusim read that pasuk exactly the way it says. Mimocharas HaShabbos. That it means that the Omer is always brought on the Sunday after the first day of Pesach. So if the first day of Pesach was a Monday, you would wait 7 days to the next Sunday to bring the Omer, and then you count 49 days to Shavuos. The Chazal had said no. The tradition is Memachras HaShabbos means on the morning after the first day of Pesach, on which you are Shabbat, on which you rest, because it's Eisem Malacha. So in fact, it's on the 16th of Nisan always, the day after the first day of Pesach, which is the 15th of Nisan. And then you count 49 days from the 16th of Nisan, and you get to our Shavuos that we have today. Well, this argument went back and forth and was a real mess until finally, as you can see, because during this period of time, from the 8th of Nisan all the way to the end of Pesach, they finally came to an agreement, and the Baitusim agreed with the Rabbanon that in fact Memachras HaShabbos means exactly that, the day after the first day of Pesach. Good. Amamah, Mereish Yachad Nisan Atam Nebei, from the Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 8th day of Nisan, Itum Tamidah, the Talmud was established between the Machlokes, between the Saddusim, the Sadducees and Chazal, whether it's a communal offering or an individual offering. They agreed that it was a communal offering. And on these days, it's a minor holiday, and we do not eulogize and certainly don't fast. Right? The Gemara Why does Megillah Taanis have to say that it starts from Rosh Chodesh Nisan to the 8th? Let it say it starts from the 2nd day of Nisan until the 8th. The Rosh Chodesh, and Rosh Chodesh itself, the first day of Nisan, Gufe Yontif Uvasa. It is itself a Yontif. And it's always awesome to fast and eulogize on Rosh Chodesh. So what's the question? So you didn't have to bring it down because Megillah Taanis is going to start. He said the Yontif starts on the 2nd day of Nisan. And for the Gemara, Amar Rafa, it was needed. We only brought down from the first day of Nisan and said the 2nd day of Nisan, to Asir the day before. In other words, by saying that it goes from the first Rosh Chodesh Nisan to the 8th, it means that we are therefore asking as well to fast and to eulogize on the 29th of Adar, the day before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So says the Gemara, Shulafan of Nami, I don't need you to tell me that even the prohibition against saying Hespedim, eulogizing on the day before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, on Chav Daled Adar, on Chav Tes Adar, typically, I would learn it out. It's the day before Rosh Chodesh. It's the day before the Yontif of Rosh Chodesh. The day before on Rosh Chodesh, I'm not allowed to eulogize. No, so automatically the day before I don't eulogize. No, that doesn't flow so simply. Rosh Chodesh Diaraisu. The Rosh Chodesh are biblical in nature. Udiaraisu loy boya chizuk. And biblical ordinances do not need strengthening. So you don't have to attach the rules of today to yesterday, to the day before, in order to strengthen it. Titania, because we learned in the Brayso. Those days, the minor Yom Tovim, like Chanukah and Purim, that I mentioned in Megillas Taanis, the prohibitions that apply to the very day itself, no fasting and no espadin, apply to the day before and the day afterwards. That you're not allowed to fast on the 24th of Kislev, and at the end of Chanukah as well. The day after Chanukah, you're not allowed to fast and you're not allowed to eulogize. But Shabbos and the Yom Tovim, regarding Shabbos and the Yom Tovim, that means the biblical Yom Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and Rosh Chodesh, Hey Mesurim, on the very days of the biblical Yom Tovim, there is the Issa, the prohibition of fasting and eulogizing. Lifneihem ulachreihem mutarim. But the day before the Yom Tovim and the day after those Yom Tovim, you are allowed to fast and you're allowed to eulogize. What is the difference between Shabbos and the Yom Tovim and Rosh Chodesh, as opposed to the minor Yom Tovim of Megillas Taanis, like Chanukah and Purim? Shabbos and the Yom Tovim are biblical ordinances. And they don't require rabbinical strengthening because they're biblical in nature. People know to keep them. But those minor holidays like Purim and Chanukah, which are only rabbinic in nature, rabbinical ordinances, and rabbinical ordinances require strengthening because people don't take them as seriously. So therefore, they expanded it out to before and afterwards as well. Any questions? Or everything's good? Okay? I'm assuming everything is good, and we go further.
Yeah, okay.
We're good. Okay. Amamar. Mitamna Bay at Soif Mayado. From the 8th day of Nisan until the end of Pesach, the what they call the date of when Shavuos would be was settled, and that they all agreed that Mimocharas HaShabbos, the day after the Shabbos, actually means the 16th of Nisan and not the Sunday following the first day of Pesach, which means that Shavuos always falls out on the 6th of Sivan. So, and on those days you certainly can't fast, and you can't eulogize as well. Sprite to come out the same question. Why do you have to say until the end of the Yom Tov of Pesach? Lema Adamoyed. Say from the 8th until the 14th, until Pesach begins. Because Moyed Gupe Yom Tov Uvasa. Because Pesach itself is a Yom Tov, a biblical Yom Tov, and you're certainly not allowed to fast or eulogize. Amara Papa, Kidi Amarav, the same way we had it before. You didn't have to mention about the days of Pesach itself. We're now on Yud Ches Amud Aleph. Today's daf, 18A1, except to prohibit the day before it as well. Okay. Here too, the reason why you mentioned it goes from the 8th all the way through the holiday of Pesach is in order to ask it to prohibit the day after Pesach, also prohibited from fasting and from eulogizing. In other words, after what do you call the day after Pesach? It is the day after Pesach, but the answer is Pesach is biblical in nature. biblical in nature, doesn't need strengthening. So on its own, there would be no Isser the day after Pesach for fasting and eulogizing. It's only rabbinic to protect the rabbinical holiday of which they established once the fight with the Baitusin ended and everybody agreed that the Omer was brought on the second day of Pesach, and not on the Sunday after the first day of Pesach. Right, the Gemara, come on, if that's the case, who does the Mishnah and Taanis, who's the man, the Omer of the Mishnah and Taanis? In Megillus Taanis, excuse me. Kid Rabbi Yosi, the Omer, Bein Rafado, Bein La'ach Rabasa. It's going to the rules of Rabbi Yosef in our Mishnah, who said that when Megillus Taanis asters, prohibits Hespedim, eulogizing, that the prohibition extends both to the day before and the day after the minor holiday. It means the day before Hanukkah, the day after Hanukkah, you cannot eulogize and certainly not fast. But if that is so, then on the 29th of Adar as well, why does the Megillus Taanis say it is also on the 29th of Adar to fast and eulogize? Because it's the day before the minor holiday of the establishing of the Korban Tamid, of the Tamid offering being a communal sacrifice. Typically, the Havile Yomi Debosa Esrit Tamanabe. Let it be the prohibition of the 29th of Adar should come from the fact that in fact it's the day after the 28th of Adar, which also happens to have a minor holiday mentioned in Megillus Taanis, the Tanya, because we learned the Megillus Taanis. On the 28th of Adar, good tidings came to the Jews, so that they would not be removed from keeping the Torah and observance. And therefore, they of course made that into a minor yontif on that day when the Gezerah, the decree, was lifted. What's the story? An edict was issued against the Jews by the Romans. They should not learn. They should not circumcise their sons. And they should desecrate the Shabbos. To this day, these are the mitzvahs that truly define what a Jew is all about, and they went right after it. So what did Yehuda ben Shmuel and his colleagues do? They went to one of the great matrons of Rome, where people gathered by her. And she said to them, go and make a public protest at night. Why at night? Because in those days there were no mics. If you want to be heard, do it at night when the streets are quiet, cry out. So they went and cried out in public in the nighttime. They said, Amru, Ishamayim, oh heavens. That was a supplication to the Rebbeinu Shalom that their word should be accepted. Then they said to the Romans, are we not brothers? Are we all not children of one father and one mother? Don't we all come? Esav and Yaakov both come from Yitzchak and Rivka, from Isaac and Rebekah. So, in what way are we different from every other nation and language that's under your dominion, Rome? They should decree on us such evil decrees that we should not be able to keep our culture. And because of this demonstration, the Romans felt bad and they abolished the decree. The Roman Senate obviously they abolished the decree. And that day, the 28th of Adar, they made it into a yontif. Well, the rule is you make it into a yontif. According to Rabbi Yosi, the day before and the day after, that means the 27th and the 29th of Adar, it would be prohibited from fasting and from eulogizing. So that's the reason why on the 29th of Adar, you wouldn't be able to eulogize and fast, which means that you didn't have to mention from the 1st of Nisan, because the 1st of Nisan itself is Rosh Chodesh. Biblically, you can't fast and eulogize. You only need to mention in Megillas Taanis from the 2nd of Nisan. So why did they go ahead and mention Meyarkasa from the 1st day of Nisan and onwards? Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Yitzhak.
Hi, Amar Abaya. Didn't know you were there. Amar Abaya. There we go. Says Abaya, Loi nitzracha ela l'chodesh ma'ubar. The reason that they mention over there the 1st day of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, as part of the minor festival, is only when Adar is a full month of 30 days. It happens infrequently. It happens. Actually, it happens many times when we have, like this year, 2 Adars, an extra Adar, an Adar Aleph and an Adar Beis. What do you call it? With the Adar Aleph would be 29 days, and the second one is 30 days. That's what happens this year, so it could work out. But Rav Ashi Amar, afilu temel l'chodesh chas. So we could be talking about even an Adar that has 29 days. If that's the case, the 29th day of Adar is prohibited from eulogizing and fasting because of the minor holiday that was established on the 28th of that, when the Roman decree was lifted, which would mean that the day before, the 27th, and the day afterwards, the 29th, you're not allowed to fast and you're not allowed to eulogize, which means that I didn't need to bring down Rosh Chodesh Nisan as part of the minor holiday to teach me about the day before, because the day before, anyways, is the day after the 28th. It's the day after the holiday of the 28th, and you're not allowed to fast and eulogize. So what's going on? So says the Gemara, because kol shel b'Taanis also behesped mutter, because any day restricted, because it's the day after a minor holiday. Let's pick our holiday, because it's the day after Hanukkah. Fasting is not allowed, but eulogizing is allowed. So eulogizing would not be prohibited on the 29th of Adar. We're now on 1882. It would not be prohibited. It would be prohibited to fast on the 29th because it's the day after the minor holiday of the 28th, the day of the lifting of the decree of Rome. But you would be allowed to eulogize. But because the 29th of Adar is situated between the holiday of the 28th, the lifting up of the decree from Rome, and the beginning of the 8-day minor holiday, celebrating the agreement that the morning and evening sacrifice of the Talmud, the everlasting sacrifice of the morning and evening, is communal in nature and not individual in nature. That would be an agreement, since the 29th is both the day after a minor holiday and also the day before a minor holiday. Asuya ki yontif atzmai, the Rabbanan made it like the minor yontif itself. Va'afilu behesped nami oser, and therefore even to eulogize it is prohibited. So therefore the Megillas Taanis had to say that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is part of the minor holiday of the establishment of the Talmud sacrifice as a communal offering, because if it had just been a biblical holiday of a Rosh Chodesh, a biblical holiday, as we said before, does not require strengthening by the rabbis, because biblical stuff are held. So they don't need a day before and a day after to bracket it. It's only holidays that are established on a rabbinical level that go ahead and do it. So in fact, let's talk about Hanukkah here just for a second. The truth is, today we only know about Hanukkah because of a Gemara in Masechta Shabbos. In Tractate Shabbos 21b, 21b, Chaf Al Mem Beis, the Gemara starts off with these words: My Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? You know what that means? That people didn't know what Hanukkah was. No other yontif, not even Purim, because at least in Purim it's written down in the writings, in Ksuvim, it's written. We have Megillas Esther, but Hanukkah is written nowhere. It happened much, much later. It may come earlier than Purim in the calendar, but in fact it came only 200 years before the destruction of the Second Temple. So it was really a minor holiday, and it always was a minor holiday, in the sense that the Gemara itself had to ask, my Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? If we didn't have that Gemara, there's a pretty good chance that today we wouldn't be keeping Hanukkah. The few places that it's mentioned in the Mishnah and in the Gemara, we would have no idea what it's talking about. If that sounds strange, you'll see later on in today's daf, there clearly was a very, very famous story that happened. The Gemara brings it down anecdotally, a one-liner, and you know what Rashi says? We don't know the story. This famous story, it's gotten lost in the annals of history. That's what would have happened to Hanukkah, except that there are 3 pages in Shas, in Masechta Shabbos, that goes through the whole miracle. What it called? My Hanukkah. So that's what it called. So that's the idea over here. So in protecting these Yom Tovim, the Rabbanan said because they needed strengthening, because they're rabbinical in nature, not written anywhere, we have to attach the day before and the day afterwards prohibitions that apply to the holiday itself. So even though Rosh Chodesh Nisan itself is biblical, it doesn't require that protection day and afterwards, because we always keep the Rosh Chodesh because it's biblical. But the minor holiday that's overlaid on it, that needed protection by keeping it as well on the 29th. Very good. Amamar. We go further. 18A2. 18A2. Amamar. Mitzvane baby at Seif Mayade the Yasif Chagad Shvur Deloy Mispe. From the 8th day of Pesach until the end of the Yontif of Pesach, it means overlaying the biblical Yontif of Pesach was a minor Yontif, minor rabbinical Yontif on Pesach. The date of the Yontif of Shavuos was settled. What do I mean by that again? The pasuk said regarding the Karban Omer, the new grain offering that was offered on the 2nd of Pesach, which allowed everybody to use the new grains that are now harvested. At the same time, exactly 49 days after you brought the Omer is when Shavuos is. The Yontif of Shavuos. The pasuk said L'mochras HaShabbos, on the day after the Shabbos. The Baitusim said L'mochras HaShabbos should be read literally. That means the Sunday after the first day of Pesach. So if the first day of Pesach falls on a Monday, you would have to wait until the next Sunday to bring the Omer, and then you count 49 days to Shavuos. The Rabbanon, like we do today, said no, Mimachas HaShabbos always means the 16th of Nisan, the day after the first day of Pesach. And what does Machas HaShabbos means? The day after the resting on the first day of Pesach. It's attached to the pasuk which it comes. And finally, everybody agreed on that formulation. Anyways, we continue. So, says the Gemara, why does the Tana have to say from the 8th of Nisan? It should say from the 9th of Nisan. Tamane Gufe also, because the 8th itself is also, because it's part of the previous holiday that was established. It's because it's one of the days on which the Talmud offering was properly established, when everybody agreed, them and the Sadducees that in fact the Tamid offering of the morning and the afternoon is communal in nature and comes from the communal funds of the matzah shekel, from the half shekel, and not from individuals. Says the Gemara, gotta fill you in on something else. Even the ilu mikle milsa, because if something should happen, ubit shiva, and the sages would abolish the 7 minor Yom Tovim on the first 7 days of Nisan. Temane gufe also. Nonetheless, eulogizing on the 8th day of Nisan itself would still be prohibited. Because it would still be the first day of the days in which the Yontiv of Shavuos was settled, because everybody agreed that the Omer, the new crop offering, was offered on the 16th of Nisan. So says the Gemara, now that you came over here to teach me that we mentioned 2 dates twice, because something might terrible happen to remove the minor holiday on one end, you still would have the holiday on the other end, and the day before it would be prohibited from eating, from fasting and eulogizing. If you got that, then I can explain the previous Gemara as well. Regarding the 29th of Adar, even the Ilu Mikle Milsa, something should happen, and we would nullify, we would abolish the holiday of the 28th, which was the holiday of the lifting of the decree of Rome, if something else should happen on that day. And if since it would lift up that holiday of the 28th, then the day afterwards, the 29th, also would have its restrictions lifted. As a petition, it still say that the 29th is prohibited from fasting and eulogizing. Why? Because it's the day before the first day of the Tamid that was properly established. And now the Gemara says, Itma, Rav Chia bar Asi Amarav, halacha to Rav Yosi. The halacha is like Rav Yosi, that eulogizing is prohibited on the day of the rabbinical minor holiday, and it's extended both to the day before and the day afterwards as well. The Shmuel Amar, no halacha to Rameya, the halacha is a Rameya, that of course eulogizing is prohibited on the day, and it only extends to the day before, but not to the day afterwards. So says the Gemara, Miyam Shmuel Achi, does Shmuel really say that halacha is like Rameya, that the prohibition of eulogizing only goes to the day before, but not the day after the minor holiday? But how did we learn? Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said, what does Megillas Taanis mean by stating the words on them twice? Look at number 20 on the bottom. On number 20 on the bottom, it says, these are the days that the Rabbanon declared not to fast on them. And on some of them, not even to eulogize on them. The word on them is used twice, meaning it's coming to create a limitation. What is the limitation? To teach you, says Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Shehein Oisim, that only they, the days of the actual holiday are prohibited, but the day before them and the day after them is permitted to eulogize. And Shmuel says the father halacha follows like Rav Shimon Gamliel. So Rav Shimon Gamliel said not only the day of, he says only the day of the minor holiday. You're not allowed to fast, of course, and you're not allowed to eulogize. But, says Shmuel, I hold like Rav Shimon Gamliel, that the day before the holiday, the minor holiday, and the day after the minor holiday, I am allowed to eulogize. That's not like Rameir. Rameir says, the day before the holiday, you're not allowed to eulogize. Only the day afterwards you are allowed to eulogize. So what's going on? We're now on 1883. 1883. Mikara, at the beginning, Savar Shmuel thought, 1883, Chiva the Leka Tana de Mekel Kirameya. At that time, he thought there was no Tani that was more lenient than Rameir. See, he said, Omar halacha to Rameir. The halacha to Rameir. At that time, he only heard from Rameir and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi saying it's prohibited to eulogize both the day before and the day after the minor holiday. And Rameir said only the day before you're not allowed to eulogize, but the day after you are allowed to eulogize. So he went with Rameir. Given the Shmuel Reb Shimon the Mekel to pay, but when I learned from Reb Shimon that he's even more lenient to Rameir, that he says only the day of the holiday, the minor holiday, you can't eulogize, but the day before and the day afterwards, you're certainly allowed to eulogize. I moved on to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. In fact, halacha follows like Rabbi Yossi, that not only the day of the minor holiday you're not allowed to eulogize, but you can't eulogize the day before and the day after. I will clarify to you what Rabbi Yochanan really meant over here. When it says, Bali, what did Rabbi Yochanan mean? When did he say that looks like Rabbi Yossi? Only in regard to those days with the Megillus Taanis declared not to fast on them. But if there are days that you could fast, then of course you could eulogize as well. That it's only that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi only in cases in which Megillah Taanis says you're not allowed to fast. But Rabbi Yochanan said many times that the halacha follows the anonymous Mishnah if there is no dissenting. If there's nobody dissenting against the Stam Mishnah, the anonymous Mishnah. It's not, and we learned, even though the sages said, when it comes to reading the Megillah, Purim, the Megillah is read on the 14th or the 15th. It's read on the 14th in regular cities, and on the 15th, those cities that look like Shushan, in that its wall that surrounds the city is from the times of Yeshua ben Nun. So for an example, Jerusalem reads the Megillah not on the 14th like we do in the United States, but reads it on the 15th like they did in Shushan. So what we're saying over here is that while the right dates are the 14th or the 15th, there are times when we allow you to move it up all the way to the 11th. Either you can read it on the 11th to 12th to 13th as well. Okay, which we're going to get into in the next Masechta, which is Masechtas Megillah, the Masechta about Purim, is the next Masechta we're going to start in about 10, 15 days. So that we say regarding the Megillah, that we can advance the reading of the Megillah, but we cannot postpone it after the 14th and 15th. We're now on Amud Beis, Yud Ches Amud Beis, 18b1, but nonetheless, Mutarim Behepsiru B'Taanis, eulogizing and fasting are permitted on the days that we do advance the Megillah reading. Amos, what are we talking about? If you're talking about the cities who have walls, who have walls from the time of the Yeshua ben Nun, in other words, from Joshua, if you talk about the people that are supposed to read on the 15th, but this year they moved it up one day to the 14th, and we're telling those people, you are allowed to eulogize and fast on the 14th. Me, Shari, but are you really allowed to eulogize on the 14th and fast on the 14th? Well, it's written in Megillus Taanis, but it's written in Megillus Taanis. Yoim Arba also boy, Yoim Chamisha also boy. The 14th of Adar and the 15th of Adar, Yoim Purayaninu. These are the days of Purim. The Lord lists behind in which one is not allowed to eulogize. And if you're not allowed to eulogize, you're certainly not allowed to fast. The Omer Rabbah, and Rabbah explained, it was not necessary for Megillus Taanis to say this, in order to prohibit the ones who read on the 14th from fasting and eulogizing on the 15th, and the ones who read on the 15th from fasting and eulogizing on the 14th. So if you're telling me that we moved up the reading of the 15th guys to the 14th, they still would not be able. They still would not be able to fast. They still would not be able to fast and to eulogize. So says the Gemara. Ela b'nei Abesa. We're talking about the guys on the 14th. The Kakari lebetleisa, and they read on the 13th. In other words, the market day fell out on the 13th. The Monday or Thursday fell out on the 13th. And on that day that they read the Megillah, I'm saying to you, but nonetheless, they're allowed to eulogize and fast on that day. Says the Gemara, no, you can't. Yom Nicanor. It's the day of Nicanor. This day of Nicanor is not the famous Nicanor of the doors, of the golden doors that he brought from Alexandria, I believe, in Egypt, and that they fell overboard. One of them had to be thrown overboard, and the door floated right back there to Yisrael. This is a completely different story, which the Gemara will get into shortly. Right? That is the day of Nicanor, another day of a minor festival. Okay? In other words, the 13th of Adar is a minor festival in and of itself, known as Yom Nicanor. So, and on that day, therefore, it's on the day itself, of course you can't fast and eulogize. So, Ella, what are we talking about? The day are based on the days we normally read on the 14th, the Kari Levi Tresa, but are reading on the 12th. Okay, and we're saying, and they moved on the 12th because Monday and Thursday fell out on the 12th. Okay, the market day. So they're allowed to read, but what are we saying? They're still allowed to fast and eulogize on the 12th. You can't say that because guess what? The 12th is Yom Tiranusu. It happens to be that the 12th is also Yom Tiranusu. And again, what day is Yom Tiranus? We're going to get to it. So now we've got that the 13th of Adar happens to be a minor holiday known as Yom Nicanor, the day of Nicanor, and the 12th is known as Yom Tiranos. We must be talking about, the Mishnah is talking about those who read normally on the 14th, but move it up to the 11th, which is the most time you can advance the reading of the Megillah. So they move it up to the 11th. And on that day, and you're still allowed to eulogize and fast on the 11th, even though it's the day before the 12th of Adar, which happens to have the minor holiday of Turanius. And if you hold that the day before a minor holiday, also you're not allowed to eulogize, right? Then how could Rabbi Yochanan, who follows the anonymous Mishnah rule like Rabbi Yosef, who says that fasting is forbidden before any minor holiday? So what's going on? Lies. The Gemara is answering. We're talking about the people on the 14th that in this year read on the 12th. You said this was the minor holiday of the day of Tyrannus. Yom Tyrannus Kufet Botle Betule. It happens to be that the minor holiday of the day of Tyrannus was abolished. Why? Because Vinahargu by Shemaiah v'Achia Achid. Because Shemaiah and Achia, his brother, were killed on it. You hear this? Zog says the Gemara, Ki had Rav Nachman gazir Taanis b'treisa. Because you see that Rav Nachman wants to create a fast day on the 12th of Adar. Amula Rabbanan, the Rabbanim said Yom Tyraniusu. It's the day of Tyranius. It's a minor holiday. How could you make a fast? Amalahu. Yom Tyranius Gufe B'Telu Batli. The day of the Tyranius itself was abolished. Because Shemaiah and Achia, his brother, were killed on it. Everybody take a look at number 8 on the bottom. Look at number 8 on the bottom. Shemaiah and Achia were pious men, but their story is unknown to us. Here is a case where the Gemara brings a story that really was extraordinarily well known, so well known that the minor yontif, the minor holiday of Yom Taanis, which we haven't explained yet what happened there, 18b1, Daddy, 18b1, Yudches Amid Beis. So the holiday of Yom Taanis was established as a rabbinical minor yontif, no different than Hanukkah and Purim. And nonetheless, it was abolished because it was the day that Shemaiah and his brother Achia were killed. And everybody knew. And yet, we don't know the story. And who writes the words? The Messiah Sashas in the left-hand corner on the thing brings down, it comes from the Aruch. It's a Rishon. The Aruch was a Rishon who said, we don't know the story. The Gemara brings it down as a double bar. It was a famous, famous story. We don't know it.
I know the story.
What's the story, Daddy? Of Shemaiah and
The story
Achia.
was that the king's daughter was murdered.
No, Daddy, that's not Shemaiah and Achia. That is not, don't say that. That is not Shemaiah. No, it's not. You'll see from the Gemara. It's not. That was Lipus and Pipus. That was not Shemaiah and Achia. It was not them. We don't know. We don't know who Shemaiah and Achia is. You'll see. We're going to get to the rest of the story. You're right.
Yeah.
But we don't know who they are. We don't know their story. What I'm trying to make the point is, we are in the middle of Hanukkah. The truth is, we would never know what Hanukkah is if the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos had not, on the 21b, had not asked the following question. My Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? Without those two words, my Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? There is no Masechta Hanukkah. There's no tractate Hanukkah. There's no tractate Hanukkah. Doesn't exist. It's because 3 pages, 3 dapen, in Masechta Shabbos of all place, in Perek Bamed Madlikin, with what do you like candles for the Shabbos, the Gemara over there says, oh, by the way, I got a story to tell you about candles. What story is that? The story of Hanukkah. My Hanukkah. What's Hanukkah? Without those words, we would not be celebrating like most of the Megillas Taanis, like most of the minor Yom Tovim of Taanis that were written in Megillas Taanis, they are forgotten. And they were being forgotten already at the beginning. Amazing. And you'll see, Daddy, be patient here. We're going to try to get to the end of the parak. We got 5 minutes because I told Jerry we're ending at 9:25 today. Here we go. But we're still fasting on the 12th of Adar. You should not be allowed to, because it's the day before the day of Nicanor, the day of the third, which was never abolished. Okay, we still don't know that story. So now we're on 18b2. We're heading straight down. We're going to get to our stories right now. Now that the sages have abolished the Yontif of Taanis itself because of the tragic events that occurred on that day, should we decree that you shouldn't fast on that day because the next day is the minor holiday of Nicanor? No, the tragedy overrides any minor holiday that came along. Says the Gemara, my Nicanor, my Taanis. What are we talking about? The day of Nicanor, one, the day of Taanis. The Tanya, because we learned in Megillas Taanis, Nicanor Echon Parche Yevonimaya was a Greek governor. So Nicanor was a Greek governor. Each day he would wave his hands against Yehuda and Jerusalem. Where will it fall into my hand and I will trample it? And it is unbelievable that we're learning this tomorrow when? On Hanukkah itself. Because look at the next words. When the kingdom of the house of the Chashmonoim of the Maccabees prevailed and they defeated the Greeks. They cut off Nicanor's thumbs and big toes. And hung him on the gates of Jerusalem. The mouth that spoke with arrogance. And the hands that waved against Jerusalem, the Kama shall have revenge taken against them. Right? Tell the Kama is Hashem. Okay, since this occurred on the 13th of Adar, Chazal declared this date a minor yontif on which you cannot fast or eulogize. By Turanius, and this is the story. Amru, Bikesh Turanius laharages limanus upayis echad velud kaya. Turanius wanted to kill Lunus and Pipus, his brother, in Lud. What's the story? The what do you call it? The emperor's daughter was found murdered.
Oh, that's the one. You're right.
And what happened is, as usual, it was a blood libel. They blamed the Jews. So in order to save the entire Jewish community, amazingly, Lonyanus Upaisus rose up and accepted blame. They said, "We are the murderers." Papas, right? And he said, "We accept the blame." What is remarkable about these great tzaddikim? Look at their names. Their names were Greek, given Greek names. Nonetheless, great, mighty Jews, in which it says that where they are in Gan Eden, nobody else can even stand near their place in Gan Eden. So great and holy. Listen to this Gemara. Amal Lahem, okay, Amal Lahem. So they stepped up. So Turanius said to them, if you are the nation of Hananiah, Mishav, Azariah, let your God come and save you from my hand. Just like Hananiah, Mishav, Azariah by Nebuchadnezzar, by Nebuchadnezzar in the times of Daniel, were thrown into the fire and they survived. Okay? That's the same way Hananiah and Mishav Azariah were saved from the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. They said, Hananiah and Mishav Azariah tzaddikim gemoremu. Hananiah and Mishav Azariah were perfectly righteous men. They were deserving of a miracle. And Nebuchadnezzar was a proper king. Listen to these words. A proper king. It was worthy to have a miracle be brought through him. How was he proper? When Nebuchadnezzar was an extraordinarily evil king and destroyed the first base of Mikdash, because when he saw what happened to Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, he stood up and praised. Listen to this. Praised HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the creator of the world, with such great praises that the Gemara brings in another place that his praises were better than the praises of David HaMelech.
Right.
Until a malach came and hit him on the mouth to make him stop, so that the words in Tehillim would still remain greater. But this evil one, you, Turanius, you're a commoner. You're not deserving of a miracle to come through you. And we are not righteous, but liable to destruction for sinning to the omnipresent. And if you do not kill us, the omnipresent has many executioners. The omnipresent has many bears and lions in the world who can attack us and kill us. There are many viruses that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can send. Right? He's in charge. He's got a lot of messengers. But the Holy One, blessed be your name, did not place us into your hands, except in order to eventually avenge our blood from your hands. Despite these words, Turanius killed them immediately. Amru, and the Chazal then said, No one had moved from there, from the place where Lannis and Pipers had been executed. Of officers came from Rome bearing an imperial edict against Taanis, who was and they split open his head with clubs. Since this happened on the 12th of Adar, the Chazal declared this a minor holiday. Let's get to the end of the parak. Ein geyser Taanisin ala tzimun betchila b'chamishi u'b'sheni ein geyser Taanis b'rosh chadashim. We do not start Yom Tovim, okay, on Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, or Purim. But if we had already started it, and Rosh Chodesh comes, or Chanukah or Purim comes, and we're already in the middle of a series, you keep right on going. What does it mean, commencement of a fast, that we no longer interrupt it? You need to be in 3 fasts. In other words, Bahav, Monday, Thursday, and Monday. And that's the way we paskin, the Rambam paskin. Now we're on 18b3, heading to the end of the parak. Here we go. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Zu dibi Rameya Shomer Mishum Rabbi Gamliel. These are the words of Rameya and the words of Rabbi Gamliel. You do fast, you complete the fast even on the Yom Tovim days. That means even on the days of the days, Ratoisis, right on the top, says this only applies to Rosh Chodesh, because Rosh Chodesh there's no chiyuv suda. You don't have to eat. So in fact, if you eat bread on Rosh Chodesh and you bench, you say Birchas Hamazon, if you forget Yahweh B'Yavai, you don't have to go back to bench because there's no chiyuv suda. But Chanukah and Purim, there is an obligation to be besimcha, to be joyful, and to eat, and therefore you're not allowed to fast. In fact, the Rambam and others argue, and they say Purim there's a chiyuv to eat. Who said on Chanukah there's a chiyuv to eat? Doesn't say that anywhere. On the other hand, we say the whole Hallel on Chanukah. So what he called? So maybe that is. Anyways, Dorish Matzuta Mishayder Avuna, Hilchas Halacha, started in Mishalim, and the halacha is yes, the fast and complete his fast like the views of the sages. How did Allah say the Taanis Ketzad? How did Allah say the Taanis Ketzad? How did Allah say the Taanis Ketzad? We shall return to you and say the Taanis Ketzad. We shall learn to you and say the Taanis Ketzad. We shall return to you and say the Taanis Ketzad. And this is where we stop. And tomorrow we will